When you speak of karma or an internal soul, you are using the specialized vocabulary of a 3,000-year-old intellectual revolution. These are not just common spiritual terms. They are artifacts of a complex philosophical framework forged in the Iron Age forests of India. This textual history began with the transition from the early Vedic age, which focused on outward rituals and the worship of various deities, to the Upanishads. As documented in manuscripts like this one, Indian thought shifted inward, prioritizing deep metaphysical inquiry over ceremonial sacrifice. This diagram illustrates the Upanishadic trap, a cosmic system where every action, karma, produces unavoidable debt, compelling us into a recurring cycle of birth, death, and suffering. Moksha, liberation, is the deliberate exit from this loop, transcending the karmic system to reach ultimate truth. The Upanishads established the dominant framework for Indian thought, that life is a cycle of suffering requiring an exit. This became the standard against which every subsequent rebel, from materialists denying the soul to reformers challenging the exit strategy, would have to define themselves. By the 6th century BCE, Vedic rituals were so formalized that a wave of new thinkers began to reject them. These rebels argued that the ancient texts should no longer be seen as the ultimate source of truth. This rejection formed the heterodox or Gnostic schools. In Indian philosophy, the term atheist specifically denotes anyone who refuses to accept the Vedas as absolute evidence. This category encompasses the materialists, the Jains, and the Buddhists. The Charvakas, or materialists, argued that consciousness dies with the body, leaving no soul to be reborn. Gautama Buddha countered with a different model. He also rejected a permanent soul, but replaced it with a flowing stream of consciousness, which transfers like a flame from one candle to another. To defend the tradition, the orthodox or Astic schools formalized their own rigorous systems. While they disagreed on the details of logic and nature, they were united by a single epistemological rule. The Vedas were considered a valid, infallible source of proof. This split ensured that Indian thought would never be governed by a single uniform faith. Instead, progress would be driven by logical debate and the constant demand for verifiable proof. During the medieval era, a crisis emerged within the orthodox tradition. It was sparked by Shankaracharya, a young philosopher who reinterpreted the relationship between the human soul and the divine through the lens of Advaita Vedanta. Shankaracharya argued that the physical world is mithya, an illusion that obscures the true nature of reality. He claimed that the individual soul and the supreme power, Brahma, are not merely similar, they are perfectly identical. This created an immediate problem for the average person. If the individual soul is already identical to God, and the physical world is an illusion, the act of prayer or worship becomes a logical impossibility. You cannot have a relationship with a God that is actually yourself. To fix this, a philosopher named Ramanuja launched a counter-rebellion. He argued that the soul and God are distinct entities, allowing for a meaningful connection between the worshipper and the divine. By establishing the soul and the divine as distinct, Ramanuja provided the logical justification for the Bhakti movement. Spiritual practice in India transformed from an elite intellectual pursuit into a widespread, emotional form of devotion. In the 19th century, Indian traditions faced an existential crisis. British colonizers and Christian missionaries criticized Hinduism as a fragmented collection of cults rather than a cohesive, logical religion. Swami Vivekananda countered this by synthesizing disparate traditions into Neo-Vedanta. He used the logic of universalism to argue that various local sects were merely different branches of the same Vedic tree, effectively forging a unified national identity through a centralized philosophy. By the 20th century, the focus of philosophy moved away from the afterlife. It was increasingly weaponized to dismantle systemic oppression on Earth. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar recognized that ancient karma theory was being used to justify the caste system. If suffering was seen as the result of past lives, then the oppression of the underprivileged could be dismissed as a cosmic necessity. To break this cycle, Ambedkar developed Navayana, or Neo-Buddhism. He rebuilt the philosophical system from the ground up, stripping away all notions of karma, rebirth, and the supernatural to focus entirely on social equality. This tradition of adapting ancient logic continues today. Modern figures like Osho rejected institutional dogma and reshaped meditation techniques to address the chaotic psychology of the 21st century. For 3 millennia, Indian philosophy has refused to separate logic from lived reality. It remains a toolkit used by rebels and reformers alike to confront suffering and reshape the world.